What's going on, everyone? This is Ethan, the Games Adjuster, and today we are talking about the two-player game Command and Colors Samurai Battles. So this is actually a reprint of an older version of this game, came out many years ago, and it's another game in the Richard Borg Command and Colors series. He's done quite a few of these. Most notable ones probably Memoir 44, Battle Lore, First, Second Edition, and of course of the GMT branded ones, we've got like Napoleonics, uh, medieval, things of that nature. So this is another one in that family of games where you have these three folds or three sections of the board, and you are playing command cards to move your units and order those units in those particular sections based on what the card dictates. So let's go down to the table. We'll talk about basic mechanisms of the game. I'm going to cover quite a bit of it. I do want to apologize. I know in advance there's going to be at the very tail end of it, maybe some quality or audio quality issues. Sorry, lost connection with the mic, but bear with me through that, and also in the storage that the packing might be a little loud, so be aware of that. But we'll power through it, and then we'll come back here for some final thoughts. So here we go. In the game, players will choose a scenario. Each game is based on one of the scenarios here that comes in the book. There are actually 40 total scenarios, quite a bit of variety here. You'll see all kinds of different terrain and layout and units here. The different letters stand for like the type of unit that they are. So you got bowman or samurai, spearmen, perhaps, things of that nature. Here I've got set up the second scenario in the book. It's kind of got a cavalry versus spearmen, bowmen kind of forces here. I do like that the game has this historical text, so you'll see here, when the head of the Mori clan died suddenly, Takeda Motoshige saw the opportunity to advance into Mori territory, capture Arita Castle. Provoked into action, Motonari, just a young man of 20 years, mobilized the Mori clan, set off towards Arita Castle. On the way, he and his personal retinue of mounted samurai encountered the Takeda vanguard commanded by Kumagai Motonao. The two forces, instead of closing, stood firm and engaged in a heated archery exchange. While encouraging his men, Motonao was struck down, and the Takeda vanguard, seeing their leader fall, retired back to the castle. So that's what historically happened. But here, you get a chance to rewrite history. So you're going to set out your units based on that criteria there. So I've got a couple of units here kind of sideways, but you can see each unit here has a figure on it. So this is one of my samurai bowman cavalry. It's got a symbol on the top right. This happens to be a red square, whereas you'll see here some of these forces have a green dot or maybe even a blue triangle. All right, so you'll set these forces out. You'll also sometimes have a leader. So here, example, is a leader. You'll notice this is a cavalry leader. It's a little bit taller than the rest of my cavalry units. Typically, the cavalry are going to be these larger squares when compared to the regular footmen, maybe, or regular non-cavalry units. All right, so you'll set the board out based on the scenario. You'll also set up some of these terrain tiles. Here I've got some forests and hills. There are a wide variety of terrain tiles that come in the game. You'll see here these rivers and little fenced areas, perhaps, maybe even some camps or other rivers, all sorts of stuff. Here you'll see this little farm field there. And perhaps these will be tied to a specific agenda that the scenario is going to paint out for you. Also, the scenario will dictate what your starting resources are. Some of the resources in the game include these command cards, which will have a variety of text on them to dictate what your army will be doing on your turn. And you'll also have some of these honor and fortune tokens, which are a resource that can be spent to play some of the other cards here, which are dragon cards. And you'll see, notice on the top left, this is the cost to play this particular dragon card, Insult. And each dragon card is played at a certain time. This one here says, play in reaction to your opponent's leader movement, whereas this one here, Timio Success, says play in reaction to opponent's unit gaining ground. Others will let you play before rolls, maybe, or even play alongside your command card. All right. So again, the scenario will dictate how many cards you start with here. One of the players would start with 4 cards, and the other player would start with 5 cards, and then you'd be ready to begin. So also, depending on the scenario, we'll choose which player goes first, and that player will simply follow the phases of a turn. So each player's turn is broken up into 5 phases. The first phase is to play a command card. So for instance, if I was to go ahead and activate with the red army here, I believe they go first in this scenario, they would start with playing one of their cards. So let's say we're going to start with this one here. It says order 1 unit left. And this is of course going to be on the perspective of the player that's using those units. So the red player would be activating from the other side, and their left would be over here. So if they were to move left, this unit here, because it's on the line that divides these 3 areas, the left side for them, the center between the dashed lines, and then the right side, they could go ahead and move this unit. And when they move them, each unit has its own path of movement, or a distance of movement it can take. The movement is provided to you on this nice reference sheet. So you'll see here that those particular units are called Samurai, Bowmen, Cavalry. They can move up to 2 hexes and still battle, whereas some of the Ashigaru Spearmen, which is what the blue player will have, can move up to 2 hexes, but no battle if they move the full 2. So you need to take that in mind. So let's say here, we'll play this out. We're going to order 1 unit left, and then we're going to issue an order to the unit. So after you choose your card, we're going to order which units you're going to move. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to move this unit right here. Then the next phase, the third phase, is going to be to enact the movement. So I might just go ahead and move them into this forest here. All right, and then lastly, I will draw 2 command cards. When I do draw new cards, choose one, discard the other. In addition, I get to draw a dragon card. So after you've completed movement, the next part of the turn would be battle. And battle is going to be determined by these dice. Okay, now each unit will have different terms for battle, and so every unit will have some kind of close combat. So you'll see here the Samurai, Bowmen, Cavalry have a close combat of 3 dice, but other units that have range, like this Cavalry Bowman, that same unit, can roll dice if they move, but would roll more dice if they hold still. So if they had not moved and just been ordered, they would roll 3 dice to attack any one unit within 3 ranges, or 3 hexes at a firing range. Since they move, they would only be able to move 1. In addition to that, this terrain that I chose to move into has its own restrictions. So you'll see here, you must stop if you ever move into the forest. You cannot move out in the same turn, but you may still battle. Anytime you battle out, no matter what kind it is, it was only going to be a max of 2. Any close combat into the forest would be a max of 2. Any range combat into the forest would be 1. So here, because I'm battling out, my max is 2. However, because I moved, the most die I can roll is 1. And these die are 6-sided. They'll have the 3 main symbols. You've got the green dot, the triangle, the blue triangle, and then the red square. And in addition to that, you have 3 special symbols. This is the honor and fortune die face, which will allow you to draw more of those tokens on certain units. This is a retreat flag, which may trigger the other opposing unit to retreat depending on their criteria. And then finally, you've got the swords here. And these swords, kind of like a wild in close combat, they'll count as extra hits depending on the unit. Now, some units will ignore the swords, and still range units mostly will not use the swords at all. All right, so just to play this out, let's say they were going to choose to attack maybe this unit here. I will select my target. I will see how many die I can roll. Here it would just be the 1 die. So I'll go ahead and roll that. Boom, I got the swords. We'll consult our chart here. You'll see Samurai, Bowman, Cavalry. The swords would do nothing. It doesn't really say it here, but sometimes it will. But at any rate, you'll ignore it, nothing happens, and we move on. And then the last part of your turn would be to, in the end of your turn, discard the command card you played. Normally, you would draw 1 back and then have an option to gain a dragon card or gain 2 honor and fortune tokens. Here, because of my special card, I already get a dragon card, and I got to draw 2 of the command cards. Choose one, so I might say, ooh, this sounds really good. I've got all my units are the red square ones. This is a really great card, and I'll discard the other. And then the next player would take their turn. So let's talk more about some of the things that these units will do. The range ones are pretty simple again. They'll just be moving, shooting. Close combat is a little different than the range combat. So let's play this out. Maybe the blue player had chose to maybe move this one here and move these guys too, and that was all they did, and then they came back to the red player. Well, now the red player can play this really special card, and it says order for each command card you have, including this one, issue an order to one unit with a red square symbol. If you do not have any, issue one order in order to one unit of your choice. So this would allow me to move all of my units right now. So I could go ahead and move these guys into close combat. I could leave them here because if they move out, they're still going to be able to shoot one anyways. But I might go ahead and issue an order to these guys to move up, these guys to move up, and actually we'll just go ahead and move these into close combat. All right. And so now we would still assess this. So these units here could both fire on those units there, and they might go ahead and do that, rolling one die each. That got a red hit here. Great. Took this unit out. Then they rolled again. Now as a flag, and let's say we're going to apply that here. You'll consult that particular unit here, so that we're firing on the Ashigaru Infantry Bowmen. You'll notice here they do not have any superior ranks for close combat, nor do they have anything where they may possibly ignore flags. So here they must retreat one hex and lose honor and fortune for each hex they retreat. So here, let's just play that out. They would need to retreat. Anytime you retreat, you can never retreat sideways. You always need to go back. If you cannot retreat, you'll need to lose a block unit. You may not be able to retreat if you're surrounded by enemies, perhaps. Also, if you would ever retreat beyond your baseline here, then you will lose honor and fortune. Also, still, if you were to retreat and you did not have enough honor to retreat, you would need to roll the dice. So the base of that is going to be 4 dice, and then in addition to that, for each honor and fortune, you could not pay. So here they had to lose 1 hex and then 1 honor and fortune. So if they had none, then they would roll the 4 dice plus 1, so 5 total dice, and each hit that matched, so here a green symbol, would eliminate more of those units. All right. Now you'll see here, tactically that didn't really work out for me because by making them retreat, my units here could not perform their close combat. So, but they may still fire at one of these units here, and so if they were to play that out still, they might take on that leader unit there. They made a miss. But I should mention too, anytime like this unit here hit this unit here, anytime a unit with a leader were to take casualties and remove a block, there needs to be a leader casualty check. If it is ranged combat, then the player who lost the unit with the leader will need to roll 2 dice and only lose their leader if they roll 2 swords. If it was close combat, so let's say same thing happened, but it was perhaps this unit here who had gotten there and its grill there and had done the same effect, then they would only roll 1 die. And if this 1 die results in a sword, the leader is lost. Typically, the leaders are going to give more points to the players in the scenario. So in this particular scenario, each unit lost was worth 1 point. Each leader lost was worth 2 points. The first to 3 points wins the game. So that would be very devastating for the blue player here and very great for the red player. So let's play back here this close combat just to finish this out. And we'll talk about a few more things. Close combat, you'll again consult your chart. So here the Samurai Bowman Cavalry would roll 3 dice, and we would roll first. So we roll our dice. Let's see what happens. We've got red, 2 retreats, not very good. That's not a hit. The 2 retreats would then make this unit have to retreat 1, 2, and lose honor if they had any, 1 honor for each hex. Now, had we not made them retreat, let's say instead we had gotten a couple hits. Great. We've got a couple green hits. We'll remove 2 units. Well, now the defending unit has an opportunity to battle back because they are still engaged in that close combat. So they would then roll their dice, and no matter how many units or blocks you lose out of your unit, anytime that particular unit fights, they always fight at full strength. So here, the Ashigaru Infantry Bowmen would still roll 2 dice in close combat, and they're looking for red hits or swords. Here, they got a sword. Now, normally that would be a hit, but you'll notice here, the Samurai Bowmen, because they have superior stature, can ignore 1 sword. Plus, they can ignore a second sword because they're green. And actually, that makes 3 total swords they can ignore, which is very tough and something that the Ashigaru Bowmen don't really enjoy being in close combat there because of those parameters. Had it maybe been the spearmen rolling a little bit more dice, they could suffer through that sword roll, and it would be better for them. So again, you still have to play the tactics of, I have range, there's really no need for me to get in close combat or engage with units that are not fit for that kind of combat. So you would play that out, and that would be that. Few more things here. As far as honor and fortune goes, it can of course be spent to play your dragon cards. These dragon cards will do a wide variety of things. I showed some earlier, but let's show a few more. Ninja Assassin, play alongside your command card, target one enemy leader. Before ordering units, roll 1 die against the target. A sword symbol rolled will eliminate the leader block. Very devastating. If leader is eliminated, your opponent will not have to lose a command card. Normally, command cards can be lost if leaders are lost. Also, if maybe there's a camp on the board and someone takes over the camp, that would make you lose a command card. And once a command card is lost, that further reduces your command for the rest of the game. So if you started with 5 command cards and you lost a command card, then you would be down to 4 for the rest of the game. All right, they do other things too. Some of them will let you, again, interrupt other players. So play before your close combat roll, target 1 single block unit. Target rolls 2 dice against this one in close combat. Or even still, there's some that say, play before close combat for an enemy roll. You will get to play your dice first. And if you eliminate that unit entirely, they never get to roll against you. A couple more things about leaders specifically. In close combat, so let's pretend this cavalry leader had joined this unit here perhaps, or maybe they had joined this one. A cavalry leader in close combat can spend 1 honor and fortune token to add a die temporarily to that combat. So here, this unit would normally roll 3 dice. They would get to roll a 4th die because they spent that honor and fortune. And then they would roll normally and take the effects. Now, a single lone leader can never perform combat. And again, the risk of bringing them with you would be, if ever that unit loses a block, you still have to do that leader casualty check, which, if you get a bad die roll, can be really terrible, and you'll give your opponent 2 points. So that's pretty much it as far as mechanisms go. It's not really a hard game. The biggest thing you're going to have to wrap your mind around is, what do these different units have that is unique or special to them, right? So like here, which ones hold and move for range differently. Some of these units have, like here you'll see, like they have guns, and what they would shoot at 2 to 3 range and they held their location, they would roll 2 dice. Whereas instead, if they had shot from range of 4, because they do have that increased range here, 4 hexes, they would only hit 1, which is thematic because obviously guns in these times were not nearly as proficient as they are now. And had they moved, they would not have the ability to fire in the same round. Same thing with the spearmen. They could move up to 2 hexes, but if they're charging, they're unable to fight in the same round. And then also some of the peasants here can still fight in certain scenarios. You'll have them present. And these peasants can move and may battle, but they're not very strong. They only have 2 battle, and they lose 2 honor no matter the number of hexes that they move. So, what else is there? Lastly, let's talk command cards actually. There's quite a few different ones. So this is an example of a dragon card again, but here you have some cards that will just tell you advance one particular section. Each command card you have, including this one, issue an order. So this is a really good one that the more cards you have, the more powerful this is to this particular side. Others will have you move certain units with certain symbols. So if this was in the red player's hand, not useful at all, but could be kind of useful for this blue team here who has 2 of those units. Others here can be played on opponent's turn, very much like a dragon card. Play this card after your opponent declares a close combat, just before the dice are rolled. Your defending unit will battle first. That's very cool. This is one of the more basic ones, just order 3 units in the center. All right, and so one of the things I did want to mention actually is when you have a leader with your close combat unit and they engage in a combat and cause their enemy to retreat. So let's just pretend we had done enough of the flags to perhaps make this unit retreat. They can optionally gain ground, and then do a second bonus battle. So they would roll like normal, take the effect, potentially cause their opponent to retreat again, and then even still gain ground a second time, but they would not get a second bonus combat. The benefit being they can do a lot of damage, potentially in one round, really devastate that unit. Potential pitfalls would be you're advancing more into enemy territory, like here I'm opening myself up to and be engaged by 2 units if I can't make them retreat or eliminate them. And also, you don't get that second combat. Also, the retreating unit can still battle back on you if they're not forced to retreat again. So there is that risk. Also, I should mention that ranged units, when engaged, cannot then shoot at another unit. They would have to close combat with the units they're engaged with. And still, when you are gaining ground, like in this example here, that second bonus combat, I did not have to choose the same unit I retreated with. I could have chosen this unit here instead because now I'm close combat with them. So that's another little bonus there. But there you go. I think that's basically everything I want to talk about. There are these victory point tokens that you'll collect as you get your points, so you'll just kind of collect those on your side. Maybe you can put them over here. Like if I was a blue player, I had 2 points, I might put those there. And then you'll play the scenario out until the victory conditions are met. Most of the time it's killing units and or leaders to get points, but there are some scenarios that will require you to maybe take hold of an area. So here, 1 point for each unit or leader eliminated. The Hojo player will gain 1 point at the start of each Hojo player's turn. Sorry, you can see that. When there are no Satomi units in a section of the battlefield. Hexes with a dotted line in this case are considered center section hexes. So there you go. Alright, I think that's enough of this. Let's go into how I stored this game away, and we'll go back with some final thoughts. Alright, let's talk storage. Now there is a lot of components in this game, which is good because it lends itself to variety with those different scenarios. So the game does come unstickered, so you're going to have to sticker all of these things. There's like, I think it was 6 or 7, well it wasn't 7, I know it was an odd number, but I think there was 6 sheets maybe. It says 4 here, so maybe I finished 1, maybe it was only 4. But there's a bunch of sheets of stickers. One thing I will note is the difference between the red units and the blue units. So you'll see the blue ones here, I'm sorry, this is the red sheet. See the background, how it's kind of tan with blue on top? The blue units are kind of like a really dark blue and like a darker tan. So that's really the difference in the units. The actual artwork themselves is the same. So it's just the background. So just be aware of that. Obviously the blocks are different colors, but maybe it would have been cool to have different armies. So just one comment I want to make there. But I kept the sheets because there's some spare blocks there. I'm not sure which ones I'm going to need. There's actually not the same number of blocks as there is stickers, which is a little disappointing. I would have liked all the spare blocks to have had their own stickers, but I did get a box, quite a few of them here, just kind of a mishmash of units. So there you go. So I started with putting the board in. It's an 8-fold board. Put that in first. I also put in some of these rule books here, and I'll throw in some of the smaller things like this fortune and victory point counter, kind of put those on the side. Like these samurai bowmen, there's not that many of those. Some of the smaller things you might be able to fit there. Well, I should take that out. Some of the, here we go, these blue samurai bowmen. Throw those in, we'll put these on top. And then from here, you'll put your command cards, your dragon cards, your counters. And then honestly, just the best way you can fit all these things, because there is a lot. So I do find that it's best to sort them based on their type. So here we got red, samurai, bowman, cavalry. It's better to do that because it's going to make setup that much easier, because you can just consult the scenario and be like, okay, I need SBCs, boom. ABs, SSPs, whatever, and you can just kind of get those together. So I recommend that. Do what you want to do. I think it's going to be helpful, and this is the kind of game that you want to get into, get out of. It's not a long game. It only takes like an hour. So doing that up front is going to help you in the long run. Throw everything in here the best you can fit it. Again, this is one of those few games where I find that, man, even with ideal bagging, I feel like it kind of almost forces you maybe to bag them all together, which is unfortunate. So here you can see we're kind of running out of room. We're smashing things the best we can, but I think that's going to have to do it. And there you go. So now that we got it boxed up, let's go back up top and talk about what we think of it. All right, there you go. So let's talk about it. We'll start with the theme. I think the theme is great. It's a historical area where I'm not too familiar with. I didn't do a lot of studying on the, feudal Japan, and not feudal Japan, but the samurai battles and things of that nature, and the kind of civil war turmoil that happened in Japan all those years ago. So I think that's very interesting. It's got some nice flavor text in those scenarios that kind of gives you some context as to what the battle is about. And I think it does a good job of representing that in this small battlefield with the different terrain setups and the units that are there. In that example I showed you, it was 4 main units for the red player, and historically, maybe I think historically they had sent out their units to kind of confront the imposing army, and even though they actually lost that fight, and the leader of that unit lost his life in the fight, it's cool to be able to kind of recreate that, and it's I think far enough from that. Clearly it's been hundreds of years, I think, or definitely dozens of years for sure. So it's been quite a while. So that we don't, there's not any sensitivity, I think, towards that. So that's very cool. As far as the production goes, it's pretty good, but I did have some like minor things. So the stickering, it is what it is. If you don't like the sticker games, you're not going to like this one because it is a lot of stickers. Now, fortunately, when I did it, it probably took me like an hour and a half ish, and it maybe would have taken 2 hours, but like right at the tail end of it, I had some support, and they kind of maybe shaved off 15 to 20 minutes or so. But it wasn't that bad. I got in a rhythm, and I was able to do it, and I didn't so much worry about it being perfect. So if you looked at some of the units, they weren't exact as far as perfect centering of the sticker on the block, but I think it's fine. And I do like this is like the only block war game I have, if you want to call it that. It's not like the more heavier ones, but I do like that feeling of kind of like being the general of the table and being able to move my blocks. And there's something, um, I don't know, pleasing or I like the tactile feel of the blocks and moving them and grabbing them up and moving them along. So it's very cool in that sense. Some of the things I didn't necessarily like was the smaller units are really small blocks, so it can be kind of hard at a glance to see which type of unit it is. Now they do have the color symbols on the top right to help distinguish. You do have a very large reference sheet to help you with that. It tells you how many blocks are in the unit, tells you everything you need to know about it, so they don't have to print a lot on those blocks, which is good. But because the artwork's like the same, it's a little lame. I feel that they just changed the background colors on it, and maybe they just did it for simplicity's sake, so you can print the same reference sheet and give it to both players. But I don't know. I just would have liked. I thought that maybe would have been cooler. Other than that, yeah, I think the cards are really good quality. If anything, they're like almost too thick. They're kind of hard to shuffle sometimes, but they're good quality. They're really thick cards, and the counters are fine. The little cardboard tokens, I mean, they serve their purpose. I actually don't. I know they put the honor and fortune on the back, like so you know what tokens they are, but I kind of would have liked them just to have the actual Japanese symbol on both sides. I'm not really sure like why we needed to see it in English. I mean, we know what it is. It's the only resource in the game, so that was a little weird maybe. But beyond that, yeah, I mean, all the blocks are pretty good. I only had a couple that were kind of thinner than the rest, but other than that, it's a solid production. It's what you come to expect from GMT. If you've never had a block war game before, I don't think you're getting anything that's subpar or anything like that. I think it's right on par with what everybody else would get in some of the other games like Sekigahara, and well, those are bigger blocks, but you get my point. So moving on to rules, it's a lot of rules, and it's a lot of little rules that I pretty much covered all of them honestly in that explanation. There's a few things I didn't touch on, so like a leader when retreating can choose to perform seppuku, in which they would take an honorable suicide basically, and the opponent would still gain victory points for that, but the benefit to the player losing the leader would be you instantly gain 5 honor, which can help you play some of the dragon cards and stuff. So that's one of the things I didn't touch on. I didn't also touch on some of the line of sight rules for range. Basically, the hills will block line of sight, and there's some different terrain that might affect the line of sight. Also, units in between can block line of sight. So unless the center of your hex is within range and can see the center of the other hex unobstructed by units in between, then you have line of sight. Otherwise, you won't. You'll have to shoot a different target. But those are things, excuse me, that are pretty intuitive. I don't think it's anything that takes a lot to get to understand. The only thing I thought was maybe a glaring miss on that huge reference sheet was like the phases of the game. Like there's nowhere on that sheet does it break down like phase 1, play command card, phase 2, order units, phase 3, move units, phase 4, battle, phase 5, end of turn. End of turn, you get dragon card or 2 honor fortune tokens. Or you can, if you didn't play dragon card, is another thing, you can discard a dragon card to get 1 honor fortune. So some of those little things like that I think could have been included on the reference sheet. On the back side of the reference sheet, there's like a whole empty section that it's just kind of blank. It's like they put all the units on one side, filled it all up. Other side, they have like 3 units and then blank. I don't know. Why didn't throw that on there? Mystery, but I feel like that was kind of a miss. It's not hard once you get in the flow of it. Just play card, pick the people, move the people, battle, next turn. It's not hard. Again, it's not like you're going to be lost without it. But your first time through, it would be nice, especially if you're going to teach a new player, like what do I do next? Like what does ordering a unit mean? Something like that is to me a miss. All right, so especially with as much explanation as there is, it just seemed why not include it? I don't know. But anyways, gameplay wise, it's cool. It's cool. I played Memoir 44 before. I've been really interested in this system because of that. I'd only played it like one time. I don't even think we got to finish the game. But I know Richard Borg's got the system and has made many a game in it, ranging from all kinds of things. You've got, like we mentioned earlier, Battle Lore, which is a fantasy theme. You've got Memoir 44, World War II, Tricorn, which is American Revolution. I almost got that one, but this is the newest one, so I thought I might as well start with the new one. And plus, this was a theme that I didn't have really much games in, so it's kind of a 2 birds, 1 stone thing. So I wanted to get a piece of that, not IP, but a piece of that family of games for my collection because I felt like they wouldn't be as popular as they are and have made so many iterations if they weren't good games. And it's a cool game. I love that it's accessible and that it's easy to play and easy to set up. If you separate everything, I'll caveat that. If you pour it all in one bag, it's going to be kind of a nightmare to sort them all out and set your units up. But if you separate your units and you just have one person maybe pointing to the units and telling which units to go out, finish that bag, go to the next bag, do the same thing. It maybe takes 5 to 10 minutes tops, plus the terrain, giving your cards and reading the scenario, and then you're off to the races. And the game, depending on which scenario you play, can be over really quickly because they're only maybe 3-5 point games. And you can kind of make your own scenario if you want to, I guess, make it longer, but it doesn't really take that long to play, which is very cool. It's an accessibility thing that I appreciate with the system because even though you have choices, you've got 4 to 5 cards, let's say, in your hand, maybe less if you lose leaders and lose command cards. But with those cards, which units do you command? Do you initiate the attack and take maybe your ranged unit out of range and into close combat to try to make, kind of a concerted effort to eliminate a unit with a leader maybe and kind of get extra points for not only killing the unit but killing the leader as well? If you do you risk maybe losing the advantage of range combat and forcing them to come to you and kind of picking them off as they come? Which in that particular scenario is kind of what I did. I ended up coming out on top on that one recently, and yeah, I was just able to kind of kick back, hang out in the forest, shoot 2 each time. I only rolled 3 on max, so it was a benefit for me to force the opponent in. And I like those tactical decisions. Plus the dragon cards add a little bit of spice to it as well. Now, what I will say I found that I did not like as much as I thought maybe I would was the dice combat. So maybe it's because the last few scenarios I played, I've had a lot of ranged people, but because the swords are misses for ranged people and you're only hitting basically on the color that you're trying to hit, so effectively like a 1 out of 6 chance because it's either retreat, honor fortune, nothing, which is the swords in ranged combat, or you're hitting the unit you have. And you can't mix units, so you can't have a unit with a sword and a square and a circle. I mean, a triangle, square, circle. It's each unit on their own. So even though you're vastly superior and you're shooting 3 dice at them and they're very far away and you're picking on some, scrub spearmen or something, they can be very hard to hit, which is a little disappointing. And you could argue it's thematic because maybe technology wasn't as good back then, and even though you're firing a gun, it could miss. Even though you're shooting an arrow, they don't travel that well. They could have misses there. That's well and good. Plus, they have armor, so it could be thematically like deflecting off the armor and not necessarily a fatal hit. But it does kind of stink when you've maybe played a dragon card, and now I get plus extra die in every unit I've ordered this turn. I'm ordering all my units, everybody's firing, and it could happen that you get 0 hits. Just purely bad luck, which in this kind of game, it's quick enough that it's not that big a deal, and it's a low scoring game, so it's not terribly devastating. But it does not feel, it feel like it undermines some of the tactical decisions that you make, because you could be a strategist and maybe manipulate all your units into one side and then play this card that lets you move a bunch of units in one area, and then you move them all and nothing happens. So that I felt was the only thing I really didn't like. And it's funny because in a recent game, I liked the game went from deterministic combat to rolling dice in one of my recent reviews, and I liked that actual element. But in that game, it was a worker placement type game, and the dice I felt like added a little flavor to it, a little randomness, because otherwise it was pretty scripted. There was everything out there. Here, there's enough randomness with the cards that I didn't like the extra randomness of the dice. And I could see my opponent too. They kind of had some bad rolls, which were good for me because I was able to like ignore the one hit they did, and they just got unfortunate rolls, and I was able to pretty much wipe them out without losing anything. So just be aware of that. I'm not saying I hate it. I still think the game is good, and I like again that limited choices to make because of the cards you get, and trying to make the best out of it. It's a really tactical game in that sense. It's like, okay, here's my hand. What is the best move right now? And then I can always, strategize to eventually work into maybe centering all my people or spreading them out based on this one card I have, and I'll save it for that moment. But as I draw those new command cards, I may not be able to use the unit I really want to that's in danger. I may need to pivot and try to reassess my area of focus and then take out this other side. So I like that. I just, again, the dice can be very swingy, and even those command cards can be very swingy because in that same scenario, if you draw, like, I think my opening hand was like a command card that moves all the units with a triangle or a command card that moves all the units with a green circle, but I had obviously all red squares. So eventually I drew it, which was awesome, but had I not drawn it, maybe my opponent got the jump on me. So just be aware of that. There's definitely a lot of luck here, and so I don't know that the tactician or the better general always will come out on top in this game, which is fine. That's real life sometimes, but just be aware. Beyond that, I think it's pretty intuitive. Everything else is intuitive as far as rolling dice, consulting the charts. It's not a hard game. Looking at the terrain chart, that's actually in the back of the scenario book. It breaks every single terrain down. How many dice you get battling in, how many out, can they restrict movement, did they restrict line of sight, yes or no? All that's clear. Once you learn your units chart, all that's very clear too. So it's not a hard game, which again kind of brings that accessibility, and that I think buoys the gameplay. Some of the complaints I might have. So as far as time goes, again, if you sort it out, it's pretty quick. The longest setup that you're going to have is the initial punching of the game, when you're punching out the units and you're stickering those tokens. Each individual game should only take maybe an hour and a half, setup, teardown, playtime, and even a little rules refresher, which is really good for what I think is a nice tactical war game. Some of the other games I have, one of my favorite war games I will say, or war themed games, would be like Company of Heroes, a recent Kickstarter, and it's not a long play time, but it's a lot of setup because of scenarios and different tokens you're putting out and minis and things of that nature. Here, I do appreciate that the blocks, although they're maybe sometimes hard to differentiate at first until you kind of get used to it or you bag them separate, because they're blocks, they're not as unwieldy maybe, or there's no real 3D element to this. It's just the tokens and the board, and you put the blocks out based on the scenario and you go. And I like that. So, and then the command cards are just shuffling some decks. and that's it. And casualties, super simple. You just take a block off. That reflects a casualty. Once all 4 of the blocks in that unit are dead, the unit's dead. Easy peasy. Really helps to streamline the game and keep that game time down. And your turns are really quick too, because your opponent's obviously a 2-player game. They're always invested in what you're doing. So I think, yeah, an hour and a half for this kind of game. I think it says 60 minutes on the box. Yeah, playing time 1 hour per battle. So you can set up, tear down, maybe an hour 15 even. So pretty solid. Last thing I'll talk variety. I think it's pretty good. There's a lot of scenarios. 40 scenarios for, I think, when MSRP was like an $80 game. I got it like a miniature market for like 50 when they had a sale recently. So I think that's well worth it. That's a hell of a lot of variety in this type of game. And you can make your own scenarios too. I'm sure online there's going to be postings. Maybe a GMT will do it on their website. I'm sure other people have already done it on like Board Game Geek. You could make your own scenarios, and you could put the river across the whole thing. You could put little farmhouses and fences and make all that kind of stuff you could really do on your own and improve the variety too. So A+ there. But yeah, there you go. That's my final thoughts. So overall, I do like the game. I thought I would like it more than I do, and maybe I just need more plays of it. I've only played a handful of times now, but I do still like it. Now, the biggest thing I didn't like was the dice, and I want to repeat that because, man, it can be devastating. So just be aware of that. With all that said, I do really like it. I'm going to give it a solid 7 out of 10. It's good. I'm usually willing to play it. I like it. I just don't know if it's the tactical 2-player skirmish, not skirmish, kind of skirmish game that I'm going to want to play all the time because of that really heavy luck factor between card draws, swingy dragon cards, and dice rolls that you may or may not get going your way. I could see it moving up to an 8 with more plays because of those different scenarios and the way they changed the game. But for right now, I'm going to give it a 7. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Command & Color Samurai Battles. Let me know what you thought of the game. Let me know where you think this one stacks up in the pantheon of other Command & Colors games. Let me know as well if you think there's another Command & Colors game you think would be better as far as the dice goes and maybe mitigating that. Or, if there's just another system of games maybe that I should try out if I did like this one, which I do like. Again, I want to say a 7. It's not, not a bad game. It's a good game. So yeah, there you go. I've been the Games Jester, Ethan Rodriguez. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will catch you on the next one.